Was that supposed to be funny? That's all I said. But it was enough to kill the room. The laughter stopped like someone hit a switch. Plates clinked. A fork dropped. And Lynette, my wife, just sat there, frozen, wine glass halfway to her lips. Her smile, still stretched too wide, started to slip. It was her joke. Her toast, actually. Meant to cap off our friend Daryl's engagement dinner. Meant to be lighthearted, edgy. Meant to get a laugh. It did. But only until I understood what she was actually saying. She stood, glass raised, and said, "To the happy couple, may your love be real, your secrets be small, and may you never find out what really happens on conference weekends." People howled. Even Daryl chuckled. I watched his fiancée, Brooke, stiffen slightly. But everyone else. Giggles. Head tosses. "You're so bad, Lynette," someone squealed. But I wasn't laughing. Because my wife goes on conference weekends. Often. And last month, there was one. In Atlanta. 3 nights. No photos. No receipts. And when I asked what panel she spoke on, she paused. Too long. Now she was making a joke about it. That's when I said it. Was that supposed to be funny? She blinked, then gave a brittle laugh, like I was ruining the bit. "Babe, come on," she said, still trying to keep the tone casual. "It's just a roast toast. Everyone knows I'm joking." But she didn't sound sure. I looked around. Eyes were darting. Some people were clearly trying not to make eye contact. The tension moved through the air like static. And I felt like the only person who realized a grenade had just been tossed onto the table, with a smile. Daryl muttered something to deflect. Someone poured more champagne. The night limped on. But in my head, the joke just kept replaying. "May you never find out what really happens on conference weekends." She said it like a punchline, but it felt more like a warning. That night, she acted normal. Flirty even. She curled up next to me in bed like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just watched her test the limits of what she could admit in plain sight. Wrapped in laughter, buried in sarcasm, masked as harmless humor. I didn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m., I slid out of bed, tiptoed downstairs, and opened her laptop. And that's when I saw something that changed everything. The laptop wasn't locked. I don't know why that surprised me. Maybe because Lynette was the kind of person who triple-checked the front door, logged out of every social media account after use, and kept a fingerprint lock on her phone even when we were alone. But tonight, either she forgot, or she wanted me to see. I sat at the kitchen table, the soft glow of the screen illuminating my hands. They were trembling. Not from cold, from something worse. The kind of tremble you feel when your body knows your heart's about to be pulled inside out. 3 tabs were still open. The first was a Pinterest board titled Hotel Room Mood Ideas. Dozens of dimly lit rooms, satin bedding, floral arrangements, scattered rose petals, and cocktail glasses by bathtubs. Some were pinned just hours ago. My stomach shifted. The second tab was a booking confirmation. A boutique hotel in Asheville. Not Atlanta. Not anywhere she told me she'd been last month. It was a sleek, intimate place for quiet weekend getaways, the slogan read. The booking was for 2 adults, 1 king bed, 3 nights. The reservation had already passed. Paid in full with a credit card I didn't recognize. The third tab? An email. Drafted but unsent. The subject line said, "For when it's time." There was no greeting, no dear Ellery, no apology. Just a short paragraph. I tried. For years, I tried. But the truth is, we stopped seeing each other a long time ago. You were always kind. But I needed more than quiet kindness. I needed fire. And I stopped waiting for you to light one. I stared at it for a long time. Reread it. Reread it again. Each time it stung more. Not because it was cruel, because it wasn't. It was calm. Flat. Like she wasn't even angry. Just gone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that the browser had been opened today. That email draft was edited an hour before we left for Daryl's party. Meaning, she didn't write it in regret. She walked into that room, toasted to betrayal, and came home intending to send this. Maybe after I'd fallen asleep. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe after the next conference. I closed the laptop quietly, placed it back on the counter exactly as I'd found it, and stood still in the kitchen for several minutes. I stared out the window at our quiet backyard, the wind chimes barely moving, the soft orange porch light casting long shadows. Everything looked normal, but everything was already ruined. Upstairs, I heard the creak of the bed frame as she shifted in her sleep. Like nothing was wrong. Like the joke hadn't detonated our life. like she wasn't planning her exit with the grace of a ghost. I walked upstairs slowly. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. But in my head, the confrontation had already happened 100 times. And in every version, I lost. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. I made coffee, emptied the dishwasher, scratched Hank behind the ears. Lynette walked into the kitchen wearing the same oversized shirt she always stole from me, the one with the faded Midwest Music Fest print. She smiled, kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted pancakes. Just like that. Like she hadn't practically confessed infidelity in front of 12 people. Like I hadn't spent the night reading her unsent goodbye letter. I said yes to the pancakes. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed one more normal moment before everything came undone. She chatted about work while flipping the batter. Told me how her team might fly out to Seattle for a leadership retreat next quarter. It's optional, but I'd be crazy not to go, she said, smirking as she flipped a pancake with flair. I just nodded and stirred my coffee. Later that afternoon, she left for her Saturday yoga class, the same one she's done for years with her friend Ray. Except Ray had posted an Instagram story from Kansas City that morning at her niece's baby shower, 2 states over. So unless Lynette learned teleportation overnight, she wasn't going to yoga with Ray. I waited 10 minutes after she left. Then I got in the car and followed her. I felt ridiculous doing it. I'm not that guy. I don't track people. I don't play detective. But something in me snapped the moment she kissed my cheek and called me babe, like nothing had changed. Like I was still asleep. Like the part of me that mattered was already dead, and I just hadn't noticed yet. She drove to the edge of town, not toward a yoga studio, but into a small suburban neighborhood. She parked 2 blocks from a red brick house with an ivy-covered mailbox. I stayed 3 cars back, parked under a tree, and watched her walk up the driveway, check her phone, and knock once. A man opened the door. I didn't recognize him. Mid-40s, graying hair, navy pullover, barefoot. He smiled like he'd been waiting. She stepped inside, and the door closed behind her. I sat in that car for nearly an hour. My heart felt like it was being squeezed through a paper shredder. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white, thinking, this is it. This is the moment you stop pretending your marriage is intact. This is the moment you accept that your wife's loyalty is parked in someone else's driveway. I should have driven away. I know that. I should have spared myself the next part. But I didn't. I got out, walked up to the house, and stood by the side fence, where the cracked gate gave just enough view into the backyard. There was a back window open. Voices drifted through. And then I heard her laugh. That laugh, it wasn't the one she used with me. Not the one from our honeymoon or when she watched dumb sitcoms on the couch. No. This laugh was brighter. Effortless. It was the sound of a woman unburdened. Free. And then she said something that broke me. I told him last night, kind of. Just slipped it in as a joke during the toast. He laughed. You're evil. No, she said, giggling. I'm just done pretending. It was a rehearsal. I wanted to see how far I could go without him catching on. My ears rang. I stepped back like I'd been slapped. I turned, stumbled into my car, and drove somewhere, anywhere. I don't remember the next few hours. I just remember eventually pulling into a strip mall parking lot, sitting there until the sun dipped behind the buildings, and wondering how I had become the punchline of my own life. I didn't go home that night. After sitting in the dark parking lot for what felt like hours, engine off, windows fogged, I drove aimlessly, just up and down half-lit streets I didn't recognize. I passed diners where strangers laughed through neon-lit windows, gas stations that flickered like dying stars, couples walking dogs. Everything looked normal, quiet. Everyone else's lives were still intact. No one knew the kind of joke I'd just been made into. Eventually, I ended up at a 24-hour grocery store on the edge of town. I walked the aisles without a cart, pretending I had a reason to be there. I picked up a jar of olives, put it back, walked through frozen foods just to feel the cold. At one point, I caught my reflection in the freezer glass. Pale, sunken-eyed, 38 and hollow. I pulled out my phone, opened my contacts. My thumb hovered over her name, Lynette. I thought about calling her. Thought about texting just 2 words. I know. But then I remembered the way she laughed in that backyard. The way she said it was a rehearsal. And suddenly I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I wasn't ready to give her the satisfaction of knowing I'd caught up. She still thought I was clueless. Still thought I was snoring in our bed like a sitcom husband, while she explored fire with someone else. So I did something I've never done in my entire life. I turned my phone off and left it off. When I got back in the car, I drove to a cheap motel off the highway. Not the dangerous kind, but the kind with sticky floors and vending machines that only take quarters. The woman at the desk didn't ask questions, just handed me a key card and gave me a room near the ice machine. I think I thanked her. I don't really remember. Inside the room, I didn't sleep. I just laid on the lumpy mattress, staring at the popcorn ceiling, trying to process how a woman could joke about cheating as a soft launch for leaving me. Trying to figure out when I became invisible to someone I used to brush my teeth beside every night. There was a moment around 3 a.m. when I actually reached for the motel phone, dialed the front desk, and asked if they had paper and a pen. I told myself I was going to write her a letter, not a message, a letter, something she couldn't laugh off. But I didn't write it. Because as I sat there, pen hovering over the motel's branded notepad, I realized I didn't have anything left to say that wouldn't sound pathetic. And I refused to hand her the final word dressed in my own desperation. Instead, I started planning. Not revenge. I'm not wired that way. I wouldn't know where to begin. But something else. Something that looked like an exit plan. Something that would let me disappear without her even noticing until it was too late. Because here's the thing. When your spouse cheats on you and laughs about it in front of your friends, they're not just breaking your heart. They're rewriting your history together. They're editing you out of the narrative before you even realize the credits are rolling. I wasn't going to beg to be included. I was going to ghost my own marriage before she had the chance to do it to me. I just didn't know yet how far I'd have to go. I returned home Sunday morning just after 9 a.m. She was in the kitchen again, humming along to music she only played when she was in a good mood. Her back was to me. She was stirring oatmeal, barefoot, wearing leggings and a sweatshirt that didn't belong to me. Something gray and oversized and unfamiliar. I wondered if it was his. She turned when I stepped in, gave me a smile like nothing was off. "Hey, you're back early," she said. "I thought you stayed over at Daryl's." I just nodded. Didn't sleep well. Figured I'd rather be tired in my own bed. She gave a soft laugh, walked over, and kissed my cheek like she hadn't thrown me to the wolves with a smirk 2 nights earlier. I stood there, letting her touch me, and wondered how long it had been since any of it was real. How many days, weeks, months I'd been performing the role of her husband while she quietly edited me out of the script. I went upstairs. She followed me, talking casually about her week, about a new project at work, about how she was thinking of rearranging the guest room. I answered in grunts. I told her I needed to shower and clear my head. She didn't press. Why would she? As far as she was concerned, she'd gotten away with it, and I was still in the fog. But that day, I didn't shower. I didn't nap. I sat on the floor of the spare bedroom, the one she wanted to redesign, and opened my laptop. And I started building my disappearance. First, I created a new email account, one she wouldn't recognize. I forwarded key financial records, hotel confirmations, photos, and screenshots I'd quietly gathered from our shared devices. Nothing graphic, just enough to confirm patterns, places, timeframes, names. The file name? Fade plan. Then I opened our joint bank account, transferred half to my personal account, legally, fairly, clean. I disabled joint transaction alerts. She wouldn't notice. She rarely checked the statements unless I flagged something. Next, I accessed our cell phone provider's admin panel. She never knew I was the account holder. I rerouted my number to a new SIM I'd purchased that morning, turned off GPS tracking. Then I filed a forwarding address with the USPS, rented a P.O. box 2 towns over. The key was already in my pocket. Still not revenge. Not quite. Just steps. Calculations. Each one pulled me slightly further away from the version of me she thought she still owned. By evening, I came downstairs. She was lighting candles, setting the table for 2. "I thought we could have dinner tonight," she said, almost shyly. "I feel like we've been off lately. I want to reconnect." I looked at her, really looked. She was trying to be gentle now, to pivot, to steady the ship just long enough to get to wherever she'd planned to jump off. She didn't know I was already packing lifeboats behind her back. We ate in silence. She made salmon. I said it was good. She told me about her sister's engagement. I nodded. She reached for my hand once across the table. I let her. I looked down at our fingers and imagined pulling mine away, not quickly, but slowly, like they were dissolving through hers. That night, she curled up next to me again in bed. Her breathing evened out within minutes. But I stayed awake. I didn't watch her. I watched the ceiling, counted the small cracks in the plaster above the fan. Thought about how easy it is to fall asleep next to someone when you've already emotionally moved out. Tomorrow, I'd make my first move. Something small. Something subtle. She would never see it coming. Because she still thought I was the fool in the room, laughing along with everyone else. But I wasn't laughing. I was documenting the punchline. I woke up before she did. The house was quiet, early morning blue light creeping through the blinds. She was still asleep, mouth slightly open, hand resting on my chest like we were fine. Like we hadn't already started living on opposite sides of the same lie. I slipped out of bed without waking her and padded downstairs to the kitchen. Coffee brewed slow and loud, and I used that time to open the drawer near the fridge, the one with our spare keys, extra USB drives, a few old receipts, and a black envelope I'd hidden there 3 years ago. Inside was a laminated business card from a divorce attorney named Victor Gable. A man I met only once, years ago, when my friend Owen was going through a nightmare split. I kept his card, not because I expected to need it, but because he didn't flinch. Owen said Victor was ruthless, but silent. A ghost in court. I tucked the card into my wallet. By the time she came downstairs yawning, I was already dressed. I told her I was heading into work early, which wasn't a lie. I had a few tasks at the office to distract me, and I wanted to use the company scanner. I kissed her forehead, and as I turned to leave, she said something that twisted the knife. "I'm glad you're back, Elle. I missed you this weekend." I just smiled. Me too. But in my head, the sentence finished differently. I'm glad I'm back, because now I know who I'm dealing with. At the office, I scanned everything, the credit card statements she thought were hidden, the hotel reservation, her email draft. I backed up the files to a cloud folder tied to my new email address and locked it behind two-factor authentication. I wasn't preparing to fight. Not yet. But I needed leverage. Quiet leverage. If things went nuclear, if she twisted the story, I'd be ready. Then I did something small. Surgical. I removed myself from 3 shared subscriptions, our grocery app, our Spotify family account, our Amazon Prime. She'd get the notifications, but they wouldn't mean much. Maybe she'd assume a glitch. Or maybe, if she noticed at all, she'd wonder why I'd start carving tiny holes in our routine. That afternoon, I visited a storage facility and rented a small climate-controlled unit under a different name. I drove back later with 3 boxes, books, journals, photos, childhood mementos, and all my important documents. Birth certificate, passport, social security card. I didn't pack clothes. Not yet. It wasn't about vanishing overnight. It was about detaching quietly, invisibly. That night, she made pasta, sat close to me on the couch, and leaned her head on my shoulder while we watched a show we'd already seen. She kept smiling, reaching for my hand. And I played along. Because if she was going to write me out of her life as a punchline, I'd at least control the final scene. But then something strange happened. Around midnight, after she fell asleep, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, she slept through notifications. But this time she stirred, reached for it, glanced at the screen, and froze. I pretended to be asleep. She got up, walked to the bathroom, and stayed there for almost 15 minutes. I heard her whispering, low and sharp, like someone who suddenly lost control of something she thought was handled. When she came back to bed, her breathing was faster. She didn't cuddle me this time. She lay stiff and quiet, facing the window. I listened to the seconds stretch between us, and a thought entered my mind that hadn't before. She's scared. Not because she thinks I know, but because maybe, just maybe, something on her end was spiraling too. Maybe whatever she was building with that man in the red brick house wasn't going to plan. Maybe the fire she wanted so badly had started to burn too fast. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. But I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, counting backward from 100. The war had started, and neither of us had fired the first shot. Yet, the next morning, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I stood in front of the mirror and really looked at myself. Not a passing glance. Not that routine morning shrug that says, this'll do. No, I stood there, shirtless, toothbrush in hand, and examined the man who used to be me. And for the first time, I didn't see someone clueless. I saw someone who had been quietly made into a prop, a supporting character in someone else's secret life. A man whose role in the story had already been reduced without his permission. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. What I felt was quieter. More dangerous. Like when you realize the boat isn't leaking, it already sank. And you're just now noticing you're walking on the ocean floor. Lynette walked into the bathroom behind me. She kissed the side of my neck, still damp from the shower. "You okay?" she asked, voice soft. "You've been distant." I turned, keeping my expression perfectly smooth. Just tired. She stared at me for a second longer than necessary, then smiled and said, maybe we should take a trip. Get out of town. Something spontaneous. I blinked. You want to go somewhere? Yeah, she said too quickly. Just you and me. Drive somewhere. Doesn't even matter where. She was improvising. That much was clear. Something had shifted for her. She wasn't just trying to distract me now, she was trying to patch something. But the panic was leaking through her voice. Later that day, I did what I'd been avoiding for weeks. I visited the man in the red brick house. I didn't knock. I waited. Parked down the street again, hoodie pulled low, sunglasses on. I waited until Lynette's car showed up. Watched her walk up the same driveway, ring the same bell. She was carrying a white paper bag. Thai food, maybe. Something casual. Her hips swayed the same way they always had, except this time, I felt nothing. Not even pain. Just distance. He opened the door again, same navy pullover. She kissed his cheek. He closed the door behind her. I waited 30 minutes, then stepped out of the car and walked around the back of the house again. This time, I brought a small audio recorder. I didn't plan to use it for revenge. I just wanted clarity. A confirmation that the lies weren't imagined. From the same side gate, I heard them talking again through that cracked window. Only this time, it wasn't playful. He's acting different, Lynette said, her voice lower now. He's either suspicious or starting to shut down. Then accelerate the plan, the man said. You've waited long enough. You said he wouldn't fight it. A pause. I know what I said, she whispered. But he's not as passive as he used to be. Something's off. I think he's watching me. He scoffed. You think he has the guts? Silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. I'm starting to think he might leave before I do. And if he does, I lose everything. The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. So that was it. It wasn't just love or lust or fire. It was a game of timing. A race between betrayals. Whoever left first, won. Whoever stayed behind got stuck holding the wreckage. I turned away from the window, recorder still running in my pocket, and walked back to the car. I didn't wait for more. I didn't need more. That night, when she came home, I was at the stove cooking stir-fry. She froze in the doorway for a second, maybe surprised that I was still there. Maybe expecting to find an empty house. You cooked, she said gently, setting down her bag. Felt like it, I replied. She came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, rested her chin on my shoulder. You're hard to read lately. I smiled into the pan. Maybe you've been reading the wrong version of me. She didn't reply. And for the first time in our marriage, we stood there, completely still, pretending neither of us was drowning. But we both knew the surface was cracking. I left on a Thursday. Not with a bang. Not with a scream, or a slammed door, or a dramatic monologue. I left the way a candle finishes burning, with warmth, with silence, and without asking for applause. Lynette had taken the day off. Said she had a migraine. I knew better. She was waiting for something. Maybe for me to finally explode. Maybe for the confrontation she had rehearsed 100 times in her mind, where I'd cry, and she'd explain, and somehow she'd come out looking like the one who had to do what she had to do. Instead, I made her breakfast. French toast, her favorite. Orange slices in a small glass bowl. Coffee with a splash of almond milk. She sat at the table wrapped in a blanket, blinking like she didn't trust any of it. You okay? She asked again. Yeah, I said. I just wanted us to have one calm morning. She smiled slowly. That's sweet. We ate in quiet. Her fork scraped the plate. The air between us felt like it had finally run out of lies to carry. And as soon as the dishes were rinsed and the last sip of coffee was gone, I stood, kissed her forehead, and said, I need to run a few errands. She nodded, distracted by her phone, not realizing that would be the last moment she saw me in that house. I drove to the storage unit, took the final box, the one with old photo albums and my dad's watch, and placed it in the trunk. I returned the key to the front desk and walked out without looking back. By noon, I was in a different city, a small rental cabin on the edge of a lake. Simple, quiet, no Wi-Fi, no drama, just the rustling of trees and the occasional hum of a boat motor in the distance. I had groceries, a prepaid phone, a new checking account, and a part-time remote job lined up thanks to a contact from years ago. Everything was already in motion before she even realized I was gone. I didn't ghost her completely. I left her a letter, one she wouldn't find until she opened the drawer next to the bed. Inside, no anger, no accusations, just this. Lynette. I heard everything. Not just what you said at the party, but everything that came after. I know about the house. I know about him. I know about the jokes and the draft email and how you plan to let me find out on your terms. But I'm not here to compete. I'm not here to be the last one clinging to something that stopped being real. So I'm stepping out. Not for revenge. Not for pity. Just for air. Because I deserve air. Take care of yourself. Ellery. I don't know how she reacted. I never asked. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then two. One day I opened the new phone and saw a single text from her. Please tell me where you are. I didn't respond. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just didn't know her more of me. What I owed, I had already given. And slowly, I started coming back to myself. I took walks every morning with a journal. I watched storms roll in across the water and didn't flinch. I learned how to cook more than 3 meals. I met people who knew nothing about who I was before. And I told the truth when they asked. I said, I'm starting over. And one morning, I laughed. It was real. Out loud. It came from somewhere I thought she'd taken with her. I wasn't the punchline anymore. I was the new beginning.